What's up, everybody? Welcome to the debut episode and / teaser of the Spring Football Report. I am Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I am the in-studio host and producer. Dothan was football. I'm also host of the Wiregrass High School Football Report for 96.9 The Legend and Digio Strategies. I host another podcast, a lot of podcasts out there. The Phillip Jordan Show, which is predominantly a college football show focused on what's going on in the Southeast. So I talk a lot of football, and I'm very excited about doing this. I've been wanting to do something like this for a good bit. Talking spring football, XFL, USFL. Kind of regret it. I didn't start doing this when the XFL season started. But here we are. I'm doing this the last week of the XFL season, week 2 of the USFL. But this show will carry on past it. And if you're watching on YouTube, obviously not seeing me over on the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel, but I do intend to set up a YouTube channel for this show alone as well in the next week or so. So let you guys know that. It's not on Apple Podcasts, not Spotify yet. We're just recording this live on YouTube because really we're like 31 minutes from the first XFL game of the day when Orlando travels to St. Louis. So we're just doing this live, kind of like a preview, an introduction to me, to the podcast, and also I'm going to go through today and tomorrow's games as well. But this will be up on all your podcast feeds as well over the weekend. And now, normally the show will also air on Wednesdays. That will be the goal, once a week on Wednesdays, post a show. Try to keep it around 30 to 40 minutes. So usually the layout will be moving forward, recap what happened over the weekend, probably have a guest in the middle, and then I would close out the show looking ahead to the weekend, any news or notes, stuff like that I feel it needs to be discussed. So, and the interviews will probably go about 15, 20 minutes. I do have a guest for next week, so and that will be Wednesday. That's, like I said, Wednesday will be today. I feel like that's a good day of the week to do it. It'll be, if you are someone that follows me and you've listened to the Wiregrass High School Football Report, it will be very similar to that format, which that's pretty much what I do there. Recap the previous weekend, have a guest, which on that show is usually a coach, and then look ahead to the upcoming games the next weekend. So that's kind of going to be the layout. A little bit about me. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. As I said, I write for Last Word in College Football. I am predominantly the Auburn writer over there. Big football fan, love football. That's why I love this. It's year round. That's what I do there. Like I said, the Phillip Jordan Show, college football podcast, been college football podcasting for years. Like I said, most of my show is centered around the SEC. We do jump into other conferences here and there, the big teams outside the SEC. But yeah, it's predominantly an SEC show with great guests over there as well. I've dabbled in some NFL podcasting as well. I'm a Packers fan. Let you guys know that as well. I will not tell you where my allegiance is when it comes to college football. I say straight down the middle and biased there, but I will not hide the fact that I am a Packers fan. That is 100%. So yeah, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Would appreciate if you did that. And if you are checking us out on Apple Podcasts, please, follow, rate, and review, do all the good stuff there. And another thing, just kind of wanted to jump on here real quick, talk about how I became a fan of alt football. I call it the Spring Football Report. Just because of what I do, college football and high school football side, I have not decided if this show will be CFL related. I haven't decided yet. Obviously, XFL and USFL. And then next year, the Arena Football League is supposed to be back, so we'll touch on that as well. But so I hadn't decided on the CFL part yet. So the spring football part. So, and I know if I do CFL, people are going to say, well, that don't make sense. That's not a spring league. Yeah, well, it is what it is. And apparently some CFL people find it as an offensive term if you call it alt football. So I just went to the spring football report. But mine really started, I would watch NFL Europe here and there in like 90s. I'll let you guys also too. I'm 36 years old, so I've been watching football a long time. But I would watch like arena football here and there if it was on. I happened to catch it or NFL Europe. But really, what actually started my fandom really enjoying these leagues was the original XFL. I remember I'm a wrestling fan too. Vince McMahon announced. I remember I was watching the Jim Rome show on Fox Sports Net, and he talked with Vince McMahon and about the league coming in, and I was super excited about it. I watched every game. I did not have UPN, which really makes me mad, or made me mad then. I did have UPN, so I couldn't watch those games, but I watched every NBC game. I watched every TNN game. I went to a game. It was a non-TV game because usually, for people who don't know, that the old XFL would have two games on Saturday night. You'd have that national broadcast, but then there would be another game. Maybe it's shown in the region, the local area. So I went to Orlando at Birmingham. Now I'm in the state of Alabama. I'm in Dothan, Alabama, as I said earlier with the 969 part. But so you would say, okay, Phillip, you must have been a Birmingham Bolts fan. No, actually, I was an Orlando Rage fan because I had some ties to the city of Orlando as well. So I was more of an Orlando fan. I was super excited. It was really a fun atmosphere. Me and my dad went. Happened to rain the last 2 minutes, but it was really fun. Just the experience there with the players mic'd up. You could hear a lot of stuff that was going on down the field. So it was pretty fun experience doing that. So that's where it started. So it was like, as soon as the XFL season ends, like, man, I'm not done with this. I want some more spring football. So then the Arena Football League started, they were also on TNN at the time. So I watched that, kept up with NFL Europe. I really didn't have access to the CFL till probably a little bit in the more later years in the mid 2000s. There's this channel down in the southeast called it no longer exists because the SEC Network pretty much I think put them out of business. CSS Comcast Sports Southeast. Well, they would from time to time show CFL, so I would occasionally watch it, but it was very inconsistent basis when they showed it. So I really couldn't get a feel for the league. So I really didn't have an opportunity to really keep up with it and watch it TV wise because old dial up internet, kids today just don't know. You can stream this stuff, but no dial up internet and live out in the country just wasn't going to work watching stuff on the computer. Probably, let's see, probably 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. Actually, it was 2009 because that was the year after the Arena Football League. That's the year there was no Arena Football. 2008 last season. Then the business went under basically, and then I believe that was 2009. Yeah, so I would watch the CFL there. I had every regional sports channel with Dish Network, and so one of the regional channels showed the CFL. So that's kind of where my CFL fandom started, or watching the CFL started. So I've been watching CFL since 2008 and 9 in there. Obviously, going back and watch YouTube stuff. So that's kind of where it started. And there was the UFL. We got it for a few years from 2009 to 2012. The AAF, I was really excited about that because once again, we had a team in Birmingham. And then also, I watched the XFL 2020. I remember the FXFL, watched that too as well. Really saddened the Arena Football League is no longer around. Hopefully, it's true. It's coming back next season. So excited about that. So that is a long drawn out process of telling you, or tangent, or whatever you want to call it, of where my beginnings of following these leagues came. And I've watched every XFL game this season. I didn't watch all the USFL games from last weekend, but I watched 2 of them full length. The Birmingham and New Jersey game and the Houston, Michigan game. And I watched the extended highlights on their YouTube channel of the other 2 games, Pittsburgh and New Orleans, and also the Philadelphia, Memphis game. So looking forward to today. This is Saturday. We got 4 games a day today, 4 days games tomorrow. And of course, next week, the playoffs do begin. And that's kind of what I want to do. I spent 10 minutes opening, let you know what this is, and probably boring you right now if you're listening to this and checking this out. But what I will do now, I'm going to look at these games. Let's look at this weekend's game because this is kind of like your teaser episode / debut episode, kind of an abbreviation of what the actual show will be. So this would probably be what would be in the final segment on a regular episode. So we're going to do the XFL first because they're on week 10. It's the final week of the rest of it. And I don't know, something about the 10-week season I like. It's condensed. I feel like there's more urgency. The NFL, you say, okay, you got 17 games, and every game does matter because you're trying to get the postseason. And in college, obviously, every game matters, trying to get to the 14 playoff. But with the 10 games, I feel like, oh man, you lose 2 or 3 games, that could really mess you up. You get behind, especially early in the season. So that's a lot of fun. Actually, I'm going to call it an audible. So on the Phillip Jordan show this past week, on one of the episodes, I did 2 this past week. I had Josh Boutwell from the Troy Messenger. He covers the Troy Trojans. We talked the Troy spring game, but we also talked about the Birmingham Stallions because Josh covers them too as well. He will give you coverage of the Stallions over that Troy Messenger, so really go check them out. So I clipped out the part where we talked about the Stallions. I think this is about a 6 or 7 minute clip. So I am going to go ahead and play for that for you guys, and then we'll jump into XFL Week 10 and USFL Week 2. Here though, me and you both share a passion or an enjoyment of the other spring football, USFL, XFL, that kind of stuff. And of course, over there at the Messenger, you guys are keeping up with the Birmingham Stallions, the defending USFL champions. Got a win on Saturday night. Just where does that start with you? When did you start paying attention and enjoying these leagues?
Started when I was a kid. My dad was a huge Birmingham Stallions fan. Obviously, the Stallions predate my existence. I wasn't alive when they were around, but he had games on tape. He had programs, guys. I still have those. And just the thought of the spring league always was really cool to me because as a kid growing up, I wanted football to be year round. I hated that we had in January. I got to wait all the way now to August or September for football to come back. And then the XFL came up when I was a kid. We had the Birmingham Bolts. I got to go a couple of those games. They were pretty terrible, but there was some local guys. Troy, the Troy player that I think Eric Sloan played for the Bolts, and then there's some Alabama guys too. So that was always cool. And it's always like I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, but it's it's a lot harder for people to root for a team that's that another state over, and we don't have professional football here. And I think it's something that's really cool for kids to have a professional football league. I know people look at it like it's minor league or whatever, but it's something they can root for, and it's something that I've been obsessed with the alt leagues. I think you mentioned that too. Not just football, but I was obsessed with the ABA when I was growing up, reading about it. And, there's even a hockey league where the Birmingham Bulls, and I've read about. It's just really cool to have other options, not just that monopoly of one league that kind of controls professional football, basketball, whatever. So that's where where it started. And every year I would get my hopes up when we hear about them. I remember when my very first year when I was kind of part-time working for the Andalusia Star News, they announced that the USFL was coming back. And it was going to be in Alabama. Yeah, and then it never happened. And then there was like an all-22 league or something that just never happened. And then the AAF happened, and it actually did happen for half a season. And then, the XFL came back, and it died because of COVID. And, now we're thankfully in year 2 of the USFL. So hopefully it'll last. I think there's definitely a stomach from fans that won't have spring football. I think there's probably some people that look at it like it's minor league, so they don't want to see it or whatever. But I mean, USFL last year, there's guys from last year's season that are on NFL rosters right now. There was an All-Pro that played in USFL last year. Birmingham's best defensive player, DeMarcus Gates, is now with the Charlotte Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So to say that these guys aren't good football players is just a ridiculous statement. And it's good football. It's fun football. And for me, I definitely want to see it succeed. I don't know how well 2 leagues going into the same time is gonna go. Especially, I think the teams in the same states, maybe even same cities at some point too. I don't know how well that'll go, but I'm rooting for it all to succeed. I want to see it all succeed because it's more jobs, more opportunities for football players, for coaches, for staff, everything. That's never a bad thing. And the people that root against it I will never understand. So that was long-winded, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I mean, that's just a simple fact.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is a wild time. I never really thought we'd see like two leagues like this at kind of going at the same time, which is another wild thing too. But I started with 01 in the XFL, which I'm from Alabama, but I was a Orlando Rage fan. I was big on them. But
they were a lot better than
I went to one of the games. I did go. They played at Birmingham. I went to that. That was a good experience. But it kind of just morphed now watching arena football and stuff. And my thing too is, look, the NFL is the best of the best, but there's other good football players out there that not everybody can play in the NFL because that's just the way it is. There's plenty of good football players out there. Quickly, I'll go ahead.
I mean, when you think about it, every year there's thousands of guys that are no longer have eligibility left in football that were all conference guys that were really good football players. And there's only 53 main roster spots in the NFL for each team. And there's a limited amount of practice squad guys. There's tons of guys out there that can still play that just don't have anywhere to go. Or either they have to go to Canada, and then Canada has a limit on how many Americans they can even sign. So, there's a ton of talent out there just being waiting to be found.
So the Birmingham Stallions, of course, the USFL had week 1, which we're going to talk about Stallions real quickly here. They win 27-10 over New Jersey. These are the best 2 regular season teams last year coming in. Both for 9-1. Of course, Generals got upset in the in the playoffs last year. It plays the Stallions championship. But I just got to say this: Birmingham last year was known for their defense. That defense was big time for them in this game. I mean, the offense did some good things too. Both quarterbacks, Jamar Smith and Alex Magoo. But I think the big thing was the defense for the Birmingham Stallions. Forcing the early turnover. The Generals were 1 out of 4 in the red zone. I mean, just the Stallions defense led the way.
Yeah, for sure. They even had a goal line stand too. One of the things that I was really looking forward to kind of seeing was how they were going to replace DeMarcus Gates, like I mentioned, with the Bears now. He was an all USFL player last year, and he had a ton of production. But for the most part, the majority of the defense came back from last year, and you could tell. And the majority of the team in general was back, other than a couple of guys. And that, again, you could tell that with that. The team just seemed like they had chemistry. But the injuries they had in this game was wild to see them kind of be able to overcome that. Suey Wright was kind of one of the leaders on the defense, got hurt very early on. Jamar Smith even got hurt in the first half. The best receiver, Marlon Williams from Mobile, tore his Achilles. I want to say it was like a second or third drive.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to overcome that, and it was really impressive. And the defense was a really huge part of that. The running game did not help, which was surprising to see because they were one of the best running games in the league last year. So that's something they're going to have to get fixed for sure. But that defense right now is the heart and soul of the defense, the team for sure.
Yeah, they were making plays, and it was fun. And you could tell just from the quality of play, some of the teams that played this weekend that brought a lot of players back. That's a big difference because usually when these leagues first start, week 1, week 2 is not good. The XFL quality of play got better as these players get used to each other, but we're seeing the league come into their second year with a lot of cohesiveness with the roster. It's just different than what we saw last year. So it's going to be fun. They do play Memphis this upcoming this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. They're going to Memphis. So hey, this is really the first time Birmingham's going on a road game. So that's going to be interesting how that they handle that. But I think they're good. They got a good team. They got a good system there with Skip Holtz. But all right, and that was just a quick clip of me and Josh this past week from the Phillip Jordan show. And let me correct myself. Birmingham's at home this week. I, for some reason, thought they were going to Memphis when we recorded that on Monday, but Birmingham is at home tonight on Saturday. So now let's jump into it. And like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube or catching us live, if you want to post a comment or a question, leave it down there in the you know where to put it. And I will talk about it here at the end if you leave a comment. But appreciate anybody that is checking this out right now here on the debut episode of the Spring Football Report. So we're going to do the XFL first. Like I said, this is week 10, the final week of the regular season for the XFL. And just we have some interesting scenarios, and all these games matter to some degree. There's something to play for in every game this weekend, which is what you want your final week of season. You don't want a situation where, okay, players maybe resting or teams may be taking it easy, just kind of ease into next week from the playoffs. But every game has something on the line for somebody. So in the North, DC, they have clinched. They're 8-1. They've clinched that home game in the playoffs. Now, who are they going to play is the question. St. Louis and Seattle are both tied at 6-3. Seattle beat St. Louis 30-12 last week in St. Louis. St. Louis had a great crowd, and it was probably the worst game of the season 8 for AJ McCarron. If both are still tied after this weekend, the tiebreaker is best team with best combined ranking in points scored and points allowed in division games. If that is tied, then team with best combined ranking in points scored and points allowed in all league games. So, and where it's sitting now, Seattle has a big advantage in that. So, St. Louis needs to go out this weekend. We're about to get into the games and really put on a show. St. Louis is going to have to blow out Orlando big time. Now, in the South, Houston has clinched at 6-3. They're in the playoffs. They will be hosted. Now, Arlington is playing San Antonio. Arlington and San Antonio are fighting for that number 2 spot. Sorry about that. Arlington's 4-5. San Antonio is 3-6. So if Arlington wins, they're in. Does not matter what San Antonio does. But if San Antonio loses, it's over for them, without a doubt. And now, if San Antonio wins this weekend and Arlington loses, we'll get into their games in a second, then that would put San Antonio into the postseason at 4-6. So those teams have a lot to play for. San Antonio plays at 2 o'clock today here on Saturday. So, like I said, all these games have playoff implications somewhere in them. So now, starting with the games, 1-8 Orlando will be at 6-3 St. Louis, 11 a.m. ESPN. And okay, guys, I'm from the state of Alabama, so I will say Central Time. Just let you guys know that ahead of time. St. Louis comes in as a 9-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. Like I said, St. Louis is coming off that loss. They could have clinched the playoff spot last week had they beat Seattle, but they lost 30-12. AJ McCarron felt a lot of pressure in the game. 2 interceptions, only 186 passing yards, one of his worst performances of the year. But if you look at the score, okay, they got blown out. It was close with about 5 minutes left. It was still in reach for St. Louis. So it's not like Seattle just came in there and just blown them out. Now, AJ McCarron does lead the league in touchdown passes with 18. Orlando, obviously, they're out of playoff contention. They've lost the last 2 games by a total of 4 points. Quentin Dormady has not played well. Now, they didn't even throw for 100 yards last week, and then the week before, he was just a turnover machine. They really haven't. You thought, okay, could they build on something after their 37-36 win over DC a few weeks ago? But they've really gone the opposite direction. They're in these games. They're close. They have opportunities, but they're not able to finish the deal. So what I think is going to happen here, I'm picking St. Louis to win the game. And I think they're going to win by more than 9 points. And honestly, they could very well hit the over here because St. Louis knows they have to score a bunch of points and they have to win this game convincingly. So offensively, I feel like St. Louis is really going to push the issue. Score. We may see a bunch of 3-point conversion attempts just to get more points on the board. Now, the question is defensively. I think St. Louis has been a solid defense this season, but they're going to have to make sure Orlando doesn't score a lot because of the point differential here. They're going to need to beat them by a lot of points just to kind of give that cushion. And the thing is with them, you just got to go out there and do it. And it's nothing personal against Orlando. If they run the score up, they just got to do what they got to do to make the postseason. And St. Louis will have to wait until Seattle plays the last game on Sunday to figure out if they're going to go to the playoffs or not. So that's just going to be interesting to watch how St. Louis goes about it. 2 o'clock on ABC, 8-1 DC will be at 3-6 San Antonio. DC, they are a 2.5-point favorite here, 41.5 points on the over-under. Best offense versus best defense. DC averages a league best 29.8 points per game. They're the best rushing team in the league on the season, rushing 14 touchdowns, 1,318 yards. Leading rusher in the league, Abram Smith, with 787 yards. and Jordan Tiamu is playing great ball, and then they mixed it in with Derek King in the read option game with him, which Jordan Tiamu is no slouch either, running with the ball as quarterback either. And then you look at San Antonio, stingy defense, only give up 17 points per game, but they don't score a lot. 15.6. So you look at the 41.5. I would probably go the under on the point total here. Jack Cohn is coming off his best game of the season last week, 25-31, 302, one touchdown. Now that was against Orlando, 25-23 win. Defensively, Deontay Scott, 7.5 sacks. My question is, and we'll find out in just a few hours, will DC rest players? That's going to be the big thing. If they do, because DC has nothing to gain by winning here, other than just momentum carrying into next week into the postseason. Because if they lose, they don't lose anything. They're still playing at home next week, and then it's not like you lose home field advantage for anything. I mean, they're not. They have nowhere to go. They can't go up. They can't go down. And then, so that's it. Will they rest their play? If they do, I think that opens the door for San Antonio to win. And you know what? I actually do. This is going to be my upset pick. I mean, DC's only favored by 2.5 points for a reason. San Antonio's got a good defense, and I'm just not sure if DC's going to play their players. So or play them for the full game. I'm going to go with San Antonio to win this one. I think it'll be close. Typically, their games are because they're low scoring. But I think San Antonio is going to upset DC in this one. Next up, we're going to jump into Sunday. 6-3 Houston, who's clinched the South. They will be at 4-5 Arlington. 2 o'clock, ESPN. Arlington comes in as just a 1-point favorite, 42.5 over under. I tell you what, the last couple of weeks with Luis Perez as the quarterback, since he's taken over in that spot with Arlington, they've played a lot better offensively. Last week, he threw for 335 yards against TC. That game went to overtime. They very well could have won that game. It's the best team in the league. The Houston defense will get out the quarterback, though. So Luis Perez is going to have to get the ball out quick because they do get to the quarterback. They lead the league in sacks with 33. They're second in the league in tackles for loss at 53. So the Houston defense does get to the backfield. These are the top two teams in interceptions. So Arlington has 12 on the year. Houston has 11. So if Houston's able to get pressure on Luis Perez sometimes can make questionable decisions, and he could throw some interceptions. So we'll see. But if Luis Perez is able to sit and get the ball out quickly, there's some opportunities there because Houston has not impressed me offensively here of late. I don't know. It's just this team was on fire the first 4 games. They started 4-0. They lost 3 in a row. Now they've won the last 2 games. But I don't know. Houston has been playing great. I think Arlington does win this game to go to 5-5. So San Antonio will not get into the playoffs. So both these teams, yes, Arlington ends 5-5. I believe they will beat Houston. They're favored by 1 for a reason. Again, what does Houston have to play for here? Not a lot. But what's funny is now we will see Arlington wins this. We will see these 2 teams play again next week. But in Houston, not in Arlington like they're playing today. Then the final game on Sunday night, 6 o'clock, ESPN2 is Vegas at Seattle. Vegas is 2-7. Seattle 6-3. Seattle comes in as an 8.5 point favorite, 47.5 over under. Vegas has played well recently, especially when they went to quarterback Jalen McClendon. He had 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, 73% last week against Houston. They did lose the game because of 2 turnovers. Really cost them in the game. For a good chunk of that game, they outplayed Houston. He has 5 touchdowns. There's no interceptions since he's taken over as a starter. Don't know what took him so long there at Vegas to make him the starter. Quarterback Ben DiNucci leads the league in passing yards with 2,332 yards, 17 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Had the best receiver in the league, Jakar Pearson, with 57 receptions, 628 yards, 3 touchdowns. You also have Josh Gordon on the outside, recently signed, former NFL running back Phillip Lindsay, who's trying to get back in the NFL. So I'm picking Seattle to win this game. And look, I think Orlando is going to make things interesting against St. Louis. I think they'll score enough. Look, I just think Seattle's making it. I think Seattle just has so much of a cushion. Can Vegas make this thing close? Yes. Seattle wins, and just my feeling is I don't think St. Louis will score enough points and have a big enough victory against Orlando. So I think Seattle wins. I'm picking them here, and they get to the postseason. So on the picks with the XFL, give me Seattle, give me Arlington, give me San Antonio, and give me St. Louis. Now let's jump into USFL Week 2. And actually, we're 2 minutes away from the XFL games going, so I'm going to go a little bit faster with the USFL picks. So you now have Houston 0-1 versus New Orleans 1-0. 11:30 a.m. today on USA. New Orleans is a 5.5-point favorite here. The 39.5 is the over/under. It really felt like last week New Orleans and Pittsburgh got in a field goal kicking contest, and New Orleans defense played well. They held them out of the end zone. The one touchdown for Pittsburgh was a kick return for touchdown. McLeod Bethel-Thompson, a veteran quarterback, first year in the USFL, veteran from the CFL, won the Grey Cup last season, led the league in passing yards. Led the game-winning drive. He connected with Anthony Jones with 1:13 left to win the game, 22-15. He threw for 303 yards, the best performance passing yards-wise last week in the league. Houston, when you look at them, they were close at half with Michigan. I mean, Josh Love just carved them up, 19-21, 216, 3 touchdowns. They had 4 second-half turnovers against Michigan in that 29-13 loss. I don't think Houston has enough playmakers offensively. I just feel like that's going to be their struggle this season. And if they make mistakes again against New Orleans is going to capitalize. I feel like McLeod Bethel-Thompson is going to have a big day here today. So I'm going to pick New Orleans to win this one and to go to 2-0 to start the season. Saturday night, Memphis will be at Birmingham. Memphis is 0-1. They lost their opener against Philadelphia. Birmingham's coming in at 1-0. They beat New Jersey last week. This will be 6 o'clock on Fox. Birmingham is a 7.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under is 44.5. Interesting with Birmingham. What are they going to look like offensively? They will not have Bo Scarborough in this game. Jamar Smith is out for the year due to a hand injury. Alex Magoo is in. Of course, it's interesting. Magoo was the starter last year to start the season. Jamar Smith came in he got hurt. So now the roles are reversed. But last year, Magoo did come back. We will not be seeing Jamar Smith. Now, back up today will be Jalen Morton, but Kyle Sloter has been signed by Birmingham. He was released by the Arlington Renegades of the XFL earlier this season. And then last season, he played with New Orleans Breakers. It was an all USFL performer and led them to the playoffs. So they have a solid backup there. Just didn't work in Arlington, but he showed last season with the Breakers he can be a good quarterback in spring football. They will be without him. Also, of course, they lost their number 1 receiver in Marlon Williams last week as well. So we'll see. I'm kind of wondering now. It's going to be on our Birmingham defense here. Memphis last week lost 27-23 against Philadelphia at home. Brady White had some decent moments, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he had a bad interception early. I just threw it right to the defender. Channing Stripling from Philadelphia, who's a guy you don't want to mess with because he led the league in interceptions last year. New Jersey against Birmingham was 1 of 4 in the red zone, and Birmingham forced 2 turnovers, 2 fumbles that did lead to 2 touchdowns. The Birmingham defense is really going to have to carry, I think, here. And then using Alex Magoo in the read option game is going to be very key. And for Memphis, just, I guess, see if you can continue what you're doing. Now, Philadelphia last season was not known as a great defense. We'll see where they're at. We're about to talk about their game in a little bit. I feel like Birmingham's at home again. I feel like Birmingham will find a way to win this one just because that's what they are. And it's going to be a huge loss for Memphis because then you go to 0-2 and then you're in the same division with New Orleans and Birmingham. So if New Orleans wins like I picked and then you lose to Birmingham, you're 2 games behind both of them. You still got 8 weeks to go. So it would be a big loss. But I just feel like Birmingham's going to find a way to win this one. All right, then on Sunday, 12 o'clock on NBC, New Jersey 0-1 versus 0-1 Pittsburgh. New Jersey's a 2.5-point favorite here, 36.5. New Jersey moved the ball against Birmingham at times last week. The problem was 2 fumbles, and they were 1 of 4 in the red zone. Now, what are they going to do at quarterback? I thought when Dakota Prukup came in, he was 13 of 17, 148. Didn't throw a touchdown. He was good, but he did have the fumble when it was just 17-10. about midway through the third quarter, and then Birmingham goes up 24-10. And that really was it. The game was over at that point. Be able to capitalize on being in the red zone because they moved the ball. Like I said, they moved the ball. They didn't have an issue there. They're a good running team. Just the turnovers and mistakes really cost them against Birmingham last week. They were also 4-12 on third down. You got to be better there. Now, Pittsburgh, offensively, they were not good against New Orleans at all last week. 156 yards. Did not score an offensive touchdown. Like I said, they got their one touchdown off a punt return, which then New Orleans came back and won the game. Their two quarterbacks, James Morgan and Troy Williams, they were 10 of 27 combined for 72 yards. You've got to be better there because New Jersey is not a bad defense. And then their linebacker star, Reuben Foster from Alabama product, he had 12 tackles in the game. I think New Jersey wins. I think they're probably going to win this one, probably about 10 points. I'm confident in this New Jersey pick. I really feel like, just from what I saw from week one, and this can change. This can change after this week, that Houston and Pittsburgh are probably going to be your worst two teams in the USFL because I don't feel like they have enough playmakers offensively. It's not really on the quarterbacks. I'm not throwing blame on their shoulders. I just feel like they're just going to have issues on that. That's just kind of my feeling on the whole deal with those two teams. And then the last one, and this is one I think is going to be the highlight of the weekend in the USFL. 1-0 Michigan versus 1-0 Philadelphia. 6 o'clock on FS1. Philadelphia is a 3-point favorite. Now, these last two games, the one I just talked about, this one, are being all played in Canton, Ohio. And then the over-under in this one is a 42.5 over-under. Both quarterbacks, so I think a lot of people are going to come in here thinking a lot of points, and I'm going to go the over on this one. Josh Love was awesome, won Offensive Player of the Week in the USFL last week, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was really good. I feel like I wrote 2 different things for him on that one. $215, $216, but he had 3 touchdowns. 90% completion percentage, which was a USFL record. Case Cookus was pretty good. He was 20 of 29, 212, and 3 touchdowns. Michigan has a really good defensive end in Breland Speaks. Had 7 tackles last week and 3 sacks versus Houston. Philadelphia allowed 5 sacks against Memphis. And then, of course, Philadelphia has their own star on defense in Channing Strickland when it comes to picking players off. So I look at this matchup, and this very well, I think so. Obviously, I believe like there's 6 teams that are postseason teams in the USFL. In the South, it's Birmingham, New Orleans, and Memphis. And I feel like in the North, there's 3. There is Philadelphia, Michigan, and New Jersey. And this is a big first game. Who goes 2-0 to start the season? Like I said, it's only a 10-week season. I picked Philadelphia to win the championship going into the season. I did that on Phillip Jordan's show last week. I really like what I saw to Michigan last week. I know it was against Houston, and Philadelphia played better competition, but that I'm always getting to the quarterback. And I'm going to pick Michigan to win this one. I think this is a close game. It's going to be an entertaining game. I just feel like they're going to get the Cookus just enough to cause some issues for him offensively. And if Love they just take care of the ball like they did last week and move the ball, because I'm not. There were some breakdowns in coverage for Philadelphia against Memphis last week. Some receivers just wide open. So I feel like that could happen again here. So I'm going to go with Michigan to win that one. And real quick, just a little side note. I want to congratulate the Indoor Football League for signing a contract with the CBS Sports Network to have their next 3 championship games on television. That's big for that league. I don't believe they've had that before. I'm not going to come on here and break down the Indoor Football League every week, but that was just, that's all football, spring football. So I just throw that note out there. All right, we hit 40 minutes. I said this show would be 30, 40 minutes. I appreciate anybody that checked out the show live. It'll go up as podcast. For a lot of the stuff will be dated if you listen to the podcast. But, hey, if you listen to it and you say, hey, Phillip was wrong on a lot of these picks, we'll see. We'll be back on Wednesday. So the show will be proper on Wednesday, just kind of introducing the show here on this Saturday morning. But on Wednesday, we'll be back recapping week 10 in the XFL, week 2 in the USFL, any other spring football news that hits. I will have a guest on the show, and we will pick XFL playoff games for next week and USFL week 3. So Wednesday, we'll be back. But anyways, I appreciate you checking out the show. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC, and check out all my college football stuff at Last Word on College Football. Check out the Phillip Jordan Show, College Football Podcast. And coming back very soon is the Wiregrass High School Football Report. Thank you for checking out the debut edition of the Spring Football Report.